I'm George Flinn, and you're watching George Flinn Cares. You can see this or any of the other episodes at georgeflynncares.com. And you can spell Flynn with F-L-I-N-N or F-L-Y-N-N. Either way, we've got you covered. You can go to that website and you can click on it, click on links, and you can see this program, a replay in case you miss anything, or you can see any of the other programs in case you miss them or you come in late or you've got to leave or something like that. But I expect you to, I hope you'll wait the entire time and see and, interact. I want to know that you're there. So if you're there and you'd like to tell me I'm watching or I'm viewing or I'm listening to a replay, 901-483-7000. Again, that's 901-483-7000 is the phone number. If I pick up, talk to me. If not, if I'm busy or it's late at night, you can still call and leave a voicemail, or you can text. So any of the ways to communicate, be happy to have you, be happy to hear from you. What I'd like to discuss with you is something in Memphis, Tennessee, and you may be watching this from somewhere else, and your community is the same as Memphis. There's a certain thing that's going on in the country, in the world, and it's crime. It's criminal activity. And we need to talk about that just a little bit. I'm not trying to go into a downer, and I'm not going to give you a lot of statistics, things like that. I just want to talk about a crime, and I'll tell you a story. Some crimes are committed, and you'll read about them in the newspaper, or you'll hear about them, and you'll hear, oh, well, that happened, and they recovered. Well, a friend of mine, years ago, was beaten. He was robbed, and this was, I think it was about 2007. And it happened to have been on my birthday of all times. This friend of mine, been a long time friend, and he was beaten, and he was pistol whipped, and he was left to die. He was tied up, put in the bathroom of the shop. The guy said, I'm going to rob somebody else. I'm going to come back here and kill you. And he was beaten because he didn't have enough money in the cash register. So, that happened, and he went to the hospital, was in the hospital, had to have reconstructive surgery on his face and his ear and his teeth replaced and all kind of horrible things. Now, you would think that's the end of the story, but it's not. He had a progressive decline, and the guy was caught, the perpetrator was caught, convicted, and sent to prison for robbery, or whatever robbery is, with an assault. I think that's what it is. But my friend had a progressive, slow decline from that time and passed away last week. He just progressively got worse and worse and worse. And finally, he just willed himself to die. He said, I can't go on like this. I'm just going to lie down. And he did. And he died. But remember, the criminal was not charged with murder because he died years later. But it was from that traumatic incident. And anyway, I'm not going to try. I'm just going to tell you, crime has long-term consequences long after we've read about it in the newspaper, we've seen about it in magazines, we've seen about it, heard about it on radio, or watched it on TV. It has long-term consequences. And it's something we've got to do. We've got to do something about it. Now, I feel a little bit like the guy, and I hope you remember the movie, and if you haven't seen the movie, go see it, or get it on DVD. It's not still out. Network, where the guy, the anchor, goes out and yells out the window and starts yelling, I'm mad as blank, and I'm not going to take it anymore. That's what we need to get. We need to get there. And I think we're just about at what I think is Gladwell calls the tipping point. Once we get there and once we've had enough, once the American people have had enough, all of a sudden it tips and we correct the situation. And I'm depending on people like you, with families like yours, to stand up and do something. Stop this. Stop this harassment. Stop this intimidation. We need to stop it. And that reminds me, and it's a funny clip. Go on YouTube or somewhere you can find it. Bob Newhart, he's a comedian. And he's got a therapy session, I think it's 6 minutes, called Stop It. And if you haven't seen that, you need to see that. Even if you've got to leave this TV right now, go watch Stop It. And please, see the movie Network. It's on DVD. It may be on AMC now. I don't know how old it is, but it may be on something like that. But we've had it. We've had it with this. Now, I'm sure, and I just couldn't force myself to read the obituary. I'm sure it was small. Wasn't much said. But good people are lost to crime all the time. We don't say much about the people. Let me tell you a little bit about Jack. He was a counselor. I knew him on a professional basis. He was a counselor. I'm in the medical profession. We knew each other. He worked at one of the drug and alcohol treatment centers, and he worked at another one later on. He's worked at several of them. And he helped people that everyone else forgets. He helped the drug addicts. He helped the down and out alcoholics. He helped the alcoholics that were maintaining life. He helped. And he helped with his unnatural ability, this common sense that he had to get through to people and talk to them where they needed to hear it. They didn't need to hear it in their head. They needed to hear it down here in their heart. He knew how to do that. I'll tell you a funny story about it. I was reading just last week about a technique when you want to talk to someone in your organization, you want to correct them. You don't pull them into an office. The new way of doing this would be to take them out and go on a walk around the block and talk to them outside of the environment, walking, exercising, get their head straight so they can listen to you if you're going to have a critical talk with them. Well, I was reminded, in the last time I saw Jack, I went by his home. He was lying there. He died 2 days later. But I recounted the story to him about him. This was in the 1980s. He would, if he had to correct somebody or help someone, he would take them on a walk around the block. And I told him, I said, that's a new thing now in 2013 to take them for a walk around the block. He just kind of smiled. I said, you knew about that in the 1980s. You knew about that technique. He said he didn't know where he figured it out. He just knew that was a way to get across to people. That's the kind of visionary this person was. And he didn't care if people were alcohol, drug, addicted to anything. He wanted to help them. He wanted to help them break that addiction. He wanted to help them recover and keep them in recovery so that they wouldn't backslide or fall back. He actually wanted to help humanity by doing something like this. And that's what he devoted his life to. Now, was that brought out later on? No. Only the people that he helped knew about it, because he was always very confidential about who he would help. He wouldn't tell me even. That was one of his best friends. I wouldn't know who he was treating, but I did know that he was working every day at it. He developed all kind of ideas that at the time he developed them weren't accepted. And only today we're realizing that in the treatment of drug and alcohol addiction, his methods that he just took for granted, didn't publicize them, just used them. Now we're finding him say, oh, this great new thing. And I said, wait a minute. I've heard my friend talk about this. As a matter of fact, here's some notes he gave me about this thing and how it was working for him. And so I really respect and admire someone that was in it to help the people. And as a matter of fact, that is part of my motivation. I learned this from this man. And you say, who was it? Who was it? Well, I've mentioned his name, Jack. His last name, Scott. Jack Scott. And you may have never heard of him. You may have heard of him, and he deeply affected your life. He kept it a secret. He only wanted to help you, help others, help anyone he could. We became great friends. I had open heart surgery in 1995. After I recovered 3 months worth, he forced me to get up every morning and go walk the mall with him or walk outside so that I would begin to rehabilitate and exercise. He, as one of my best friends, said, you're going to get up at 6 a.m. and we're going to meet at 6:15 and walk around for about 45 minutes to an hour. And in the beginning, I was walking pretty slowly, and I picked up the pace and picked up the pace, and he was part of my rehab. Now, that's the kind of friends we were. He actually, helped me rehab, and he wasn't a rehabilitation therapist. He was a motivator for us to do better, for us to take care of ourselves. That's the kind of person that I want you to be. That's the kind of person I strive to be. And that's why this is called George Flinn Cares. I do care. I do care because mentors like Jack Scott showed me the way to care. And I care about you, and I care about what's happening with you, and I just want the best for you. So I hope you've enjoyed this story and enjoyed hearing it, and I hope it's motivated you to care for someone else. And let's do some good. Let's do some good for someone else in the world. 901-483-7000. Your comments. 901-483-7000. I want to hear from you. I want to hear someone else that's touched your life just like this. I'm George Flinn. See you next time. Thank you.